success is a soft skill where how you behave is more important than your IQ. Hello friends and welcome. Our goal at Girl Investors is to help you become smarter, better investors. We're back in this video to review with you our top 8 learnings from The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I found Housel to be a prodigious writer and an elegant storyteller. As investors, you should pay attention because these tips can both save you from financial stress and help you build wealth. The Psychology of Money was published in 2020 and is gaining popularity as a top read. This is a book that I both listened to on Audible twice and I also purchased a physical copy. I usually don't consume more than one format, but I felt that this book deserved it. These are concepts that are timeless and I will frequently revisit them. This book was thought-provoking for me and I think it will be for you too. If you wish to learn more, then please consider subscribing to this channel and ring that bell to be notified when we upload a new video. We have several other videos on our channel and we encourage you to check them out as well. All of these top 8 tips are important, so be sure to watch the entire video. Get your notebooks ready and let's get started. Number 8. Life experiences impact our worldview on money. Your personal experiences with money make up 0.0000001% of what has happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. A lived experience provides a depth of understanding that learning about it secondhand cannot possibly touch. I think this general statement not only applies to money, but it also applies to certain things like relationships, love, racism, prejudice, and other hardships in life. You can't quite understand something until it's happened to you, a lot of the times. One of the components of scholarly research is to outline your theoretical framework or worldview for your reader. A theoretical framework becomes a transformative perspective that then shapes the types of questions that you ask, informs how you process data, and impacts the actions that you end up taking. This concept was actually drilled into me during my dissertation writing process, and in fact, I would not have earned my doctorate unless I incorporated theory into my research. Even as a person, a whole constellation of factors can impact your worldview or lens, especially when it comes to investing in wealth. These can include the generation in which you were born. For example, if inflation was high when you were growing up, then those people invested less in bonds later in life compared to those who grew up when inflation was low. This one's a doozy. Your parents' socioeconomic status. Their wealth or their lack of wealth definitely has an impact on you. Your family values. The country you were raised in. The country, yours, and the era that your parents and grandparents were raised in. The economy and job market in your formative years. And plain old luck. I'm actually noticing a space-time dimension in this list. So it makes sense that our childhood experience and watching how our parents interacted with money shapes our beliefs about it. Growing up in poverty would certainly leave emotional scars that scarcely fully heal. A wealthy person's experience can dramatically differ from the have-nots. For example, in the book, the author describes that President John F. Kennedy admitted that he had little concept of how the Great Depression impacted the average American. He had drivers and gardeners and a life of exceptional privilege that most did not have. Number 7. Retirement is relatively new. The concept of being entitled to retirement of leisure and rest in your old age, not to mention dignity, is relatively new, approximately 2 generations old in the United States. Before World War II, most Americans worked until they died. In America, the 401k, which is the retirement plan, did not exist until 1978, and the Roth IRA was only introduced in 1998. As a Canadian, I had to remind myself about when retirement started in Canada. So in Canada, we have the RRSP, which is the 401k equivalent up here, and it was introduced in 1957. And the TFSA, the tax-free savings account, which is the Roth IRA equivalent, came into effect in 2009. Interestingly, across the Atlantic, India's national pension system was launched on January 1st, 2004, with the objective of providing retirement income to all citizens. India continues to have a culture where adult children are required to take on caregiving responsibilities for their aging parents. I never quite thought about it, but even index funds are less than 50 years old, and hedge funds have only become more common in the past 25 years. So it stands to reason then that we probably have not yet fully acclimated to the modern financial system as a species, where concepts like retirement funds are barely decades old or emerging ideas depending on the part of the world that you are from. Number 6, the role of luck. Like it or not, your parents' socioeconomic status impacts the quality of your education and the opportunities that you receive in life. The odds are that if your parents did not encourage and value education, that you likely do not either. And if they do not value education, chances are they value working and earning an income to support the family as opposed to spending time in books and studying. This reminds me of Lord Randall Tarley admonishing his son Samuel Tarley for going to the Citadel to become a maester in Game of Thrones. He said, "Getting soft and fat and reading about the accomplishments of better men."
I travelled south under orders from the Lord Commander. He wants me to...
I read your letter. You're to be, maester.
Yes, and once I have my chain, I'll return to Castle Black.
I thought the Night's Watch might make a man of you. Something resembling a man, at least. You managed to stay soft and fat. Your nose buried in books. Spending your life reading about the achievements of better men. I'll wager you still can't sit a horse or wield a sword.
Randall, to be Maester of the Night's Watch is a great honor.
He can wield a sword. He killed a Then.
As far as I know, we cannot impact the family which we are born into. But evidently, even incomes are more correlated among brothers than either height or weight. Investing is not a hard science where we can confidently measure cause and effect. Unfortunately, it's difficult to assign a value to how much luck plays a role in your success, particularly when it comes to investment success. And although a successful person would like to attribute their skills as a major contributing factor to their success, that's not necessarily measurable. Risk and luck are hard to pin down. We often assume that 100% of outcomes are attributed to effort and decisions. One of the things that I find fascinating in the investment and business world, in books and podcasts, is that we tend to take advice from successful business people, and we rarely hear from those who have not yet made it in the conventional sense. These famous business people provide the N of 1 anecdotal evidence that has not necessarily been broadly tested in something like a prospective randomized trial where behaviors, attitudes, and conditions can be correlated to outcomes. Even in management science, most studies are done by analyzing retrospective data that were collected for different purposes. The author reminds us to be careful who you praise and admire. Be careful who you look down upon in which to avoid becoming. I think as a culture, we tend to glorify and worship CEOs and business leaders. I personally like to follow people like Warren Buffett and Elon Musk and Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos and Chamath Palihapitiya, and as much as the next person, actually. But I'd like to think that I'm not bowled over by them, and I have some degree of objectivity when I think about their success. Number 5, buy and hold for as long as possible. You don't need tremendous force to create tremendous results. Morgan Housel. We all know that Warren Buffett is quite popular, but I actually didn't know that there are over 2,000 books dedicated to how he built his fortune. Only the most discerning readers, though, will realize that Mr. Buffett's success is largely due to compound interest and that he has been investing since he was 10 years old. By the time he was in his 30s, he had a net worth of $1 million. He has been investing for over 75 years. Like what a lot of people do, Warren did not retire to play golf in his 60s, nor did he go looking for his passion in his 30s and travel the world. When his net worth was $84.2 billion, $81.5 billion of that came after he was in his 60s. And currently, as of the making of this video, he is 90 years old. As we've spoken before, compound interest is not magic, but it seems so. Compound interest essentially means earning interest on your interest. The concept of compound interest is not necessarily intuitive. Most people tend to think linearly. The moral of the story is to be consistent and to hold on for as long as possible. Number 4. Staying wealthy is different from getting wealthy. For most people, acquiring wealth means that you will take business risks, adopt an optimistic mindset in the face of adversity, and become very good at handling rejection. People who become wealthy, though, are essentially frugal, cheap, Scrooge-like, or parsimonious, whatever you want to call it, and they're very paranoid about preserving their wealth. The wealthy are about conservation. The wealthy are concerned with survival. I like to think of building wealth as synonymous with the aging of a live oak tree. A magnificent oak tree can survive to 300 years old, and at the beginning of an oak's life, when an acorn first sprouts, most of its energy is spent on root development, with little growth above ground. The root system of a mature oak tree can total hundreds of miles. Live oak is durable and hardy and has evolved to withstand even salt water without it eating away at the surface. Be like an oak tree, strong and durable. We're down to number 3 now, planning. As Murphy's Law would dictate, if something can go wrong, it probably will. The author reminds us that the plan is only useful if it can survive reality. When we build plans, they are based on a set of assumptions. And if you do not have enough flexibility in your assumptions or enough room for error, such as a margin of safety, then your plan becomes much more tenuous. Room for error is a very underappreciated force in finance. Room for error includes frugal budget, flexible thinking, agility, and a loose timeline. Number 2, tails drive success. If you remove just a few of Berkshire's top investments, its long-term track record is pretty average. Charlie Munger. It so happens that tails drive everything in business, investing, and finance. And by tails, I mean the ends of a distribution tail. And it's normal for things to go wrong, to break, to fail, and to fall. As amazing as an investor or manager or leader can be, no one makes good decisions all the time. We only hear about their successes and we rarely hear about their failures. Evidently, the distribution of success among large public stocks over time is not really different from venture capital. In venture capital, out of 50 investments, at least 25 of those would fail. These are also known as the living dead. 10 would do quite well, and then there would be 1 or 2 unicorns that drive 100% of the fund's returns. Likewise, for the S&P 500, in 2018, Amazon drove 6% of the returns, and Apple drove 7% of the index's returns. It seems that a few important stocks or companies can drive the majority of the results. And I think this is a good life lesson. As George Soros reminds us, it's not whether you're right or wrong that's important, but how much money you make when you're right and how much you lose when you're wrong. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. And now we're down to number 1. A good definition of an investing genius is the man or woman who can do the average thing when all those around them are going crazy. I prefer the concept of dollar cost averaging into index funds. It sounds so simple, boring even. The author gave an interesting example in the book about what would happen if you saved $1 every month from the year 1900 to 2019. This would equal 1,428 months, and just over 300 of these months were during a recession. Sue invests $1 into the U.S. stock market every month from 1900 to 2019 in the U.S. stock market on a consistent basis. Jim only invests his $1 when the economy is growing and avoids investing during recessions. He likes to avoid the turbulence in the market. And similarly, Tom invests $1 when there is not a recession, and he sells 6 months after a recession begins. Tom also invests back in the stock market 6 months after a recession ends. How much money do you think these 3 investors wound up with over time? Well, our consistent investor Sue ends up with $435,551. Jim ends up with $257,386. Tom ends up with $234,476. Just by the power of consistency, patience, and keeping her cool and not trying to time the market, Sue ends up with approximately 75% more cash than either Jim or Tom. That's something to really think about. The author himself purchases index funds, maxes out his retirement contributions, and is what I would call or consider calm, cool, and consistent. While he is a money expert, he also didn't strike me as being a money-hungry, avaricious type. So congratulations for investing in yourself. You made it to the end of this video. I highly suggest that you pick up a copy of The Psychology of Money and read through it, because there's many other concepts that I didn't cover in this video. So leave a comment below on your thoughts about this book. And if you learned something, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Is there a book that you would like us to review? Tell us in the comment section below so we can put it on our list. As always, thank you so much for watching and subscribing. Here are some videos for you to watch next. We'll be back very soon with another book review. And until then, thank you so much for watching. I'm Rosalind, and bye for now.